Hello and welcome back to Lorcana Villain. My name is Baker, and today, people, I've got two sets of top 8 deck lists for you. It was a busy weekend of Lorcana, quite a few events taking place. I'm covering 2 today, and I'm still waiting for deck lists from events like Lore League that took place, and you never know, there could be some more that make their way onto Ink decks over the next couple of days, but it's all kicking off in Lorcana now. This weekend is I'm going to be with Speci and Kim casting one of the first CCQs in Europe in Cardiff, and I believe there's also the Stockholm Open taking place, which is also a CQ if I've got my facts right. So busy weekend of Lorcana coming up, and then of course we've got DLC Bologna on the approach coming up very, very soon, and then DLC Milwaukee a couple of weeks after that. So yeah, it's all kicking off. Lorcana Season 2. I'm super excited. We're going to be looking at 2 events today, the first of which will be the Diet Coke Invitational, which took place in the United States, 79 players, and from my understanding, the entry fee was a 12-pack of Diet Coke, which is very, very cool. So we're going to be taking a look at that event. And also, over in Belgium, we have the Conflux Ink Clash, 101 players, so 2 pretty respectable sized pools. Spoilers, the meta is largely what you're expecting it to be, a lot of purple out there, but we will be talking about 1 Emerald Steel deck and 1 Blue Steel deck, which is very exciting. So let's get into it. A shout out to the channel sponsor Cardmarket. If you're looking for Lorcana singles at competitive rates, then check out Cardmarket. But let's take a look at some top 8 deck lists. So starting off with the Diet Coke Invitational, in first place, we have Max with some good old-fashioned Blurple. Pretty much the tier 1 deck of the format. There's been conversations about originally it was the triangle format of Blurple, Amethyst Steel, and Amber Steel. Then Emerald Sapphire came along to crush everyone's dreams, and everyone was talking about the core 4. I'll be honest, there's only 1 Amber Steel deck list to look at across these 2 events, so maybe it's back to a triangle format, but Amber Steel has been pushed out and replaced by Emerald Sapphire. Certainly got a couple of those to talk about today. But yeah, Blurple doing Blurple things. Let's do a quick breakdown. One of the newest toys for Blurple is the 4-cost 9th Wonder of the Universe, Dumbo, who's a 4-cost inkable 3/3 quest for 1. Evasive, we've got Breaking Records. You may exert and pay 1 to draw a card and gain a lore. And Making History, your other characters with Evasive gain that very ability. This is very much a, hey, when we reach that point of the game where we've both built up a wall of multiple characters, if I can hit my Dumbo first and start gaining advantage off of that by turning my Evasive character sideways, gaining lore, drawing cards for doing so, and making you to be the first one to have to kind of like make challenges to keep up with what I've already started to do. Or maybe you're in the mid to late point of the game and you're both essentially topping. Maybe one of you draws an Iago Spectral Power off the top of the deck, maybe the other one draws whether it's like Blurple or Amethyst Steel, they draw something that isn't evasive, and then you hit your Dumbo and suddenly you can start regaining card control. Like, it feels a bit win more in some situations, but it's well worth the inclusion. The ceiling for what this card can achieve is huge. Obviously, we're backing up with a large evasive package. 4 copies of Genie Wish Fulfilled to draw a card. 3 copies of Iago Giant Spectral Parrot, who is, of course, a primary target of things like Hypnotic Strength, which is also in this deck. Of course, Strength for a Raging Fire takes you out regardless of what damage it's doing. But your 4-cost characters are probably always getting banished by Strength by the time they play it anyway, so that's not a huge thing. Other people are teching things like Helping Hand, which is another way to target a character, so you can immediately banish this illusion. And of course, good old-fashioned Fire the Cannon. So there is a lot of Iago hate in format, but if they don't have that response card, then the Iago is so well statted and being evasive, and hey, maybe whatever removal they're burning on this Iago, they now don't have for your Dumbo or whatever it might be. 3 copies of the Madam Mim Elephant, just obviously such a well-statted card in a post-rotation format without things like Maui. I mean, Maui was never one-shotting this, to be fair. But just lack of removal overall, no crabs, things like that. Just this Madam Mim Elephant is so hard to remove, and she's the last of our bouncing characters, which can reset some of these crazy come into play abilities. Also 1 copy of TikTok here, just a big bulky 6-cost 4/7 evasive questing for 1. Of course, Iago is basically just as well statted, just 1 willpower less, but obviously is a lot more fragile than TikTok. TikTok, you're probably getting a 2 for 1, and again, just being an evasive to work with your Dumbo, or perhaps more importantly, be able to answer Dumbos and evasives in the format. And of course, 4 copies of Elsa the Fifth Spirit. one of the best cards in the game, has that evasive keyword, has rush, and can exert an opposing character on play, which is huge in this meta where, again, you're just building a wall, and usually the first one to be able to disrupt that wall, take out the MVP of that wall, the most annoying, the most valued piece, and then just establish board control from then on. Sometimes it can just be over. So those are our evasives. Of course, T-Pose and Sell the Azeroth Seas for ramp. One drops being Rafiki and Basil. This Basil with this support keyword, just a fantastic math fix. So if you can keep this Basil ready on board for the turn that you put down the Elsa, and then you can quest with the Basil, give the Elsa support, so she's now hitting for 4, taking out opposing Dumbos, Genies, things like that, or just fixing your maths with your own Genie to maybe take out an opposing Dumbo or whatever it might be. Just this, it doesn't even have to involve evasives. Just this support keyword can really come in handy, and of course and Basil has that 2 strength, which can be boosted up with Hypnotic Strength to at least hit 4. Like 2 strength is still relevant, right? But we've got the 4 Rafikis here that can hit for 3. You can boost it up with the Hypnotic Strength for hitting for 5, which is pretty relevant for things like Rhinos. And beat sticks are just generally very important in this meta, again, where you're building a wall and eventually your opponent's going to want to turn sideways. So if you can get some super value from this Rafiki taking out a Calhoun or a White Rose or a Pete, things like that. Stats just super matter. 4 copies of Belle, of course, very important in the Genie Wars. Complements these big bodies really well, like the Elephants, the Argos, the TikTok, and then onto our big beat sticks. 4 copies of Hades, just the premier removal in the game. 1 copy of Elsa, who can shift onto our 5th Spirit, and just again, I'm actually surprised to not see more of these, because in the mirror it can often come down to who's hitting the most like powerful like bombs off the top of the deck, just hitting more of them than your opponent. So I like having this at potentially a higher count. I like the 4 Hades, but we are playing 2 copies of Monstro, who's an 8 cost inkable, 6/8, quest for 2. He has rush, and you can discard a card to re-ready him, but you can't quest for the rest of the turn. Just a nice way to be able to clear up a board against things like Amber Steel, Amethyst Steel. They reach that point where like they've taken all your cards away, they've managed to completely control your board, and they're just they get to the point where it's safe for them to start turning things sideways, right? So your Monstro could potentially get a lot of value, and especially if as long as you've been able to keep some cards in your hand, right? Like they're going to clear your board, and then they're probably going to want to start turning sideways. So Monstro can come down and really punish that. Mention the Hypnotic Strength, again, just a great math fixer and can target opposing illusions. Develop your brains and vision of the future to help us find those key pieces. A little bit surprised to see only 2 vision and 4 develop. I mean, I think I get the Fort Trowel, right? You're playing 4 develop to just maximize hitting turn 2 ramp, because you really want that turn 2 ramp that your deck feels infinitely worse if you are just that 1 turn slower. So it's important to hit this. I just really like vision for the mid to late stage of the game, but even develop can be good at that stage in the game. 4 copies of Into the Unknown, again, are one of the second best removal cards in the game. Blurple absolutely eating, and 2 copies of Second Star to the Right, which is Sing Together 10. Chosen player draws 5 cards. Quite often in a mirror match, like, it just comes down to who can sing this first, really. If you can make enough characters stick that equal this 10, that you're able to get this going first, then maybe your opponent can initiate better trades before you, but you've just drawn 5 cards off this, and the sort of characters that probably sung this are potentially trading, or, you know, at least leaving some damage on board. Like, just the +5 is just incredible. It just feels like you lost or won on the spot. So yeah, no surprise to see Blurple doing Blurple things. Congratulations to Max. In second place, also on Blurple, we've got Zach. A lot of the same sort of cards. We are playing 3 Finders Keepers in this list. Not always a certainty for Blurple, although there were quite a lot in last weekend's Blurple deck list, which I was a little surprised about, because it can be very, very slow. At the same time, I keep talking about when you get to that mid to late stage of the game where maybe you and your opponent are both like really exhausted on resources, and it just becomes a top deck war of who can establish the better character first or find a way to draw the most cards, courtesy of like Genies and Dumbos and stuff. So in that sort of situation, if you find this off the top, and yes, it'll be a slow turn, but if your opponent doesn't have a lot going on, then it's perfectly reasonable. It is inkable, so I don't hate the inclusion. 2 copies of Baymax, I'm going to say popularized by Zenula Fearless of Team Maelstrom, a 5-cost Inkable 2/6 quest for 2. On play and on quest, you may remove 2 damage from another chosen character, gain 1 lore for each damage move this way. We've already talked about Belle and how powerful she can be, and she is live quite often with a lot of these big bodies like Iago, Elsa, the Baymax himself, Hades, Monstro. So odds of having damage that you can utilize here is pretty good, and this is a fantastic ability. Not everyone's going to play around this. In fact, this might win you the game just because they don't see this coming and they don't think you have a way to get to 20 in a specific turn. Like, it's kind of similar to a Rapunzel trap, right? But this one can like win you the game. So yeah, love the inclusion of Baymax and 3 copies of Scrooge McDuck. 4-cost uninkable 5/5 quest for 2. Nice and simple. 4 costs always feel good in Blurple because you ramp on 2 preferably. 4 copies of Develop Your Brain here and no vision of the future. So there you go. Shows what I know. Baker, you are wrong. Vision is good, but hitting turn 2 ramp is infinitely better, so I respect it. But yeah, it looks super good. Congratulations to Zach. Oh, I'd be remiss to not mention the 1 copy of Dig a Little Deeper. 8-cost uninkable, sing together 8. Look at the top 7, put 2 into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So maybe not as greedy as second star to the right. It's not going to be necessarily as hard to get this 8-cost. And choosing 2 out of the top 7, better than drawing 5? Probably not. But still a pretty cool inclusion and did very well for Zach on this day. So congratulations. And our final Blurple list from this event, in top 8, we have Eric Regal, or Regel. 61 cards, worth mentioning. Very similar to the first deck list that we looked through. Again, 3 Develop Your Brain, no Vision of the Future. So there you go. I am wrong. I am all the wrong. 1 copy of Monstro, 2 Elsa I like, 2 TikTok I like. Maxing out on the Madam Mim Elephants and the Iagos. Yeah, it looks super clean. 2 copies of second star to the right. Looks good. Congratulations to Eric. All right, going back to top 4, we have Barrett with some blue steel. You love to see it. Very sad to not see Scar in here. I love an excuse to talk about Future King Scar, but hey, I'll take an excuse to talk about a deck list that, again, an ink combination that we're not seeing all that much at the moment. Blue steel feels very similar to like red purple, green steel, and to a degree red-green, actually. Yo, what's a ruby deck? In the fact that, like, it's not that they don't have cool things they can do. It's a functioning deck. It just seems the power level is just so far below what the top 3 or top 4, whatever you want to call it, are doing. They're fringe decks. They will pop up every now and again. Oh, Ruby Steel as well. That's another deck that I think is kind of doing some work at the moment, but just, again, vastly overshadowed. So let's talk about this Blue Steel deck. We've, of course, got our turn 2 ramp in the form of T-Pose and Sails. That Basil is here to provide support. We don't have Elsa or any form of Rush, but still a nice little map fixer. We are seeing 4 copies of Kida, Creative Thinker. 4-cost Ingable, 3/3 quest for 1. She has Ward, and you may exert. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 into your Inkwell face down and exerted, and the other on the top of your deck. So again, a 4-cost character, so potentially playing this from turn 3. Ward, super cool. You're not getting strength. You're not getting into the unknown as soon as you turn sideways. As soon as you turn sideways, you are probably getting banished, to be honest. Like, if you can get 2 triggers of this ability out of this, then amazing. But a really nice little ramp tool with that Ward ability. I really like Kida. We've also got 4 copies of Scrooge in here, again, taking advantage of that 4-cost slot in Blurple, and 3 copies of Stitch, Alien Troublemaker. 4-cost Ingable, 3/4 quest for 1. When he banishes a character in a challenge, you may draw a card and gain 1 lore. Just a nice little board freezer. Like, your opponent's not going to want to give you value off of this. Gaining a lore and drawing a card is super, super cool. We don't have any ways of exerting opposing characters, so it is entirely on our opponent to give this to us, essentially. But I like it, and again, with the support with Bazu, you're hitting for 5. So yeah, love this. 4 copies of Donald Duck Focus Flatfoot to help us ramp. 2 copies of Jasmine Fearless Princess, popularized recently by Tiago in Amethyst Steel decks, and not the first time we will see her today as we get to the Amethyst Steel section. 5-cost Ingable, 3/7 quest for 2. During your turn, she gains Evasive, and you may discard a card, and this character gains Challenger 3 this turn. Now, the discarding a card isn't always going to be bad. We're not playing any docks, but we are running 3 copies of Beyond the Horizon, which we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, just this Jasmine is just super solid. Getting evasive during your turn, evasive is very important. Hitting for 6 means you're taking out basically everything in the game, bar a Madam Mim Elephant. Big bulky 7, quest for 2, really nice addition. We've got 4 copies of the Robin Hood. Unrivaled Archer, again, gets evasive during your turn, and 4/4 stat line is very nice for getting rid of Dumbos, Genies, etc. And when you play him, if your opponent's got more cards in their hand than you may draw a card, which is very likely. This deck isn't doing a lot of drawing cards. Obviously, the Sail is going to draw you a card, but if you're T-Poing, then you're depleting your hand, so you'd probably prioritize a T-Po line if your curve seems to suggest that you're going to be going for a Robin Hood. Develop obviously helps you filter through a little bit. We're running 1 copy of Dig a Little Deeper, so that's another way that we can like do a little bit of search and draw some cards. But our primary way of drawing cards is Beyond the Horizon, but we are likely going to be depleting our hand before we utilize this. So I think Robin Hood has pretty good odds that he will trigger. Running 4 copies of Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. No way of shifting this, but again, just a great board freezer. 1 spread damage to all opposing characters, and when she banishes a character in a challenge, you may do 2 damage to another chosen character. So again, it's all on our opponent to give us this Tinkerbell and Stitch value. It's never going to come out of nowhere, but it's going to be something that's really going to make them rethink every quest that they do if we've got this sort of characters on the board. 4 copies of Hades for removal, of course, and 4 copies of Vincenzo Santorini. 7 cost Inkable, 2/8 quest for 3. When you play this character, you may deal 3 damage to chosen character. 3 damage is pretty darn relevant. This is just going to be straight removal for a lot of annoying characters in the game. Dumbo's a prime target. Develop Sails, 4 copies of Strength for a Raging Fire, 3 copies of Smash as well. Again, just more built-in removal. Like, this deck is never seeing a Dumbo. Like, your Dumbo is well, it might trigger if you play a Dumbo later on in the game when you already have other evasives, you can trigger them straight away, and that's still pretty annoying. But your Dumbo itself is never turning sideways against this deck. And then, yeah, 3 copies of Beyond the Horizon, 7 cost Uninkable, sing together 7, choose any number of players, they discard their hand and draw 3 cards each. So against a Blurple deck that wants to second star to the right, or a Clarabelle deck that wants to Clarabelle, see ya! Beyond the Horizon, my guys. Sometimes they might be depleting their hand and they've got no cards, in which case we say, okay, you're not drawing any cards. Just I will draw cards. This looks really cool. I'm so glad it did well. Top 4, especially with spicy things in here like Stitch and Kida. Yeah, really, really cool deck list. A huge congratulations to Barrett. Going now to top 4, we have the first of our Amethyst Steel deck list, a deck list that was already doing very, very well, but there's been a surge of them ever since Tiago performed very well at back-to-back events. First place, Southside Gaming, and Charlie's Collectible? Yeah, and Charlie's Collectible Show. Had the pleasure of having him on for an interview, which was very, very informative. Very grateful for him for doing that. But he tweeted the other day something along the lines of, yo, I finally got home, and had a few days at home after non-stop traveling, so I've had the time to actually do some more casual play testing, and fine-tune the deck a little bit, and 15 cards have changed. And I commented, I was like, yo, dating our interview like this is wild, but I love to see it. Still innovating, still mixing things up, and this version of the deck does seem to resemble slightly more the version that Tiago said that they were swapping to. Again, I don't know if this Tony took inspiration from Tiago, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Just another player that's performing very, very well with this deck list. So we're super low to the ground. We've got 4 copies of Captain Hook. Again, stats super, super matter. And you can combine this Captain Hook with a copy of Jafar to give Challenger 2. So now you're hitting for that important number 5. We've got Madam Mims in here who give Challenger 3. So that's a way to deal with a Daisy in 1 swell hit. 1 fell hit. What's wrong with me? 4 copies of Diablo just for drawing cards. 4 copies of Happy, who get evasive during your turn, and again, 2 strength is already relevant. Add it on top of a Jafar Striking Illusionist or a Fire the Cannons or an Elsa or whatever, and you're taking out basically most evasives in the game. Or he can just be an evasive to take advantage of our own Dumbo. Mention the Madam Mim, obviously giving Blanket Challenger 1 to our characters is very, very cool. 3 copies of Calhoun, obviously great for stats and fighting back the board, especially on the draw. We are a Doc dot deck. We are looking to deplete that hand and then draw some more cards with Doc, but we are also an Yzma dot deck. the Conniving Chemist. I so want this card to be like the standard in Amethyst Steel. I really want it. 4-cost inkable, 3/3 quest for 2. You may exert, feel the power. You may exert if you have fewer than 3 cards in your hand. Draw into you have 3 cards in your hand. So again, same strategy, like play out as much of your hand and then profit courtesy of Doc or Yzma. This is very easily removed. Like on the draw against a purple deck, they're probably just going Elsa and then hitting it with the Elsa or the Rafiki that they put down on turn 1 or something like that. On the play, you should be like, unless you're against Blurple, and even then it's not guaranteed. Like, she's super fragile and she can be strengthed. But again, we run them in multiples. Hopefully we're going to get at least a couple of triggers. And again, it's just more options for us to refuel alongside Doc, and she's inkable. So I super like it. 4 copies of Genie Satisfied Dragon, one of the best cards in Steel at the moment. A 3-cost inkable with a 3/4 stat line, meaning he's taking out Dumbos and a lot of great evasives. And it's not hard to boost that strength up a little with Jafar or combine it with something else to be taking out Genies, things like that. Of course, 4 Giant Cobra and 4 White Rose for that passive lore gain. 2 copies of Bell for them Genie Wars. And again, a couple of big bodies, the Giant Cobra, the Genie, Elsa, quite reasonable to expect that you'll be able to get some advantage off of this. The Elsas themselves, 4 copies of Strength and 2 copies of Fire the Cannons, if you can knock off your opponent's Hook, Rafiki, Clarabelle, Basil. A lot of really important characters that just are like turn 1 on the draw Fire the Cannons is going to be really good. So yeah, no surprise to see this doing well. Although to be fair, again, referring back to the Tiago interview, he did say that with the rise of Blue Cow, then Purple Steel should be scared. But still doing well. You'd love to see it. Congratulations to Tony. And our final Amethyst Steel deck list to take a look at for this event, we've got Max L. I don't know if that's meant to be Maxwell. I just took it straight from inkdecks.com, but shout out to you. This deck looking a lot similar to Tiago's original deck list. We've got the 2 copies of Jasmine in here, who we've already talked about. Again, the evasive being able to hit for 6 is super, super good. 3 copies of Treasure Guardian, who lets you draw a card on play if you have an illusion in play. And to complement that, we've got 3 Palace Guard, 4 Raja, 4 copies of Giant Cobra. In my experience, this is live far more often than not. 1 copy of Jafar and 2 copies of Hypnotic Strength. Again, providing very similar effects, but this Hypnotic Strength is another answer to Iago Giant Spectral Parrot, which is a really annoying card for this deck. If you missed the Tiago interview, I really would recommend going back to check it out. It was super, super informative. Only 1 Bell, 2 Fire the Cannons. Looks super good. Congratulations to them. And our one and only Emerald Sapphire list from this event, we have Candice. Now, I've been playing with Emerald Sapphire quite a lot recently. Not too long ago were the content creator Fabled Set Championships. You will start seeing content for that from next week. But yeah, I played a lot of games with Emerald Sapphire in the build up to that. And I've got to say that my first Shift Clarabelle, Sing You're Welcome, draw 5 cards was one of the most surreal things I've ever done in my life. This deck has so many, like such a ceiling in the unfair things that it can do. Obviously, we've got Clarabelle, 7-cost inkable, 5/6, quest for 2, shift 5, and at the end of your turn, if chosen opponent has more cards in their hand than you, you may draw cards until you have the same number. We have those ramp tools like Tipo and Sal the Azura's Sea. Sal obviously allowing us to draw an extra card. Tipo is actually going to be more important in many cases, partly because the 2 cost can be relevant for singing some of these sing together songs, which we'll get to in a moment, but it's also depleting your hand more, which is actually what this deck wants to do, because we want to get as much value from this big Clarabelle shift as we can. We're also running 4 copies of the Contented Wallflower, who's a 3-cost inkable, 2/3 quest for 1, and on play, if your opponent has more cards in their hand than you draw a card. So that's another reason we would probably prioritize a Tipo line. Of course, also 4 copies of the 1-drop Clumsy Guest, who on play you can pay 2 ink to banish chosen item, and there are a few decks that are playing things like Emerald Chromacon at the moment, so that can absolutely come up. But again, just multiple shift lines, because if you don't hit this shift Clarabelle, more often than not, it just completely falls apart. We've got 4 copies of Donald Duck Perfect Gentleman. At the start of your turn, each player may draw a card. Again, you're emptying your hand, right? And you want to find these combo pieces. So drawing extra cards is so important for you. And the fact that our opponent's drawing extra cards is kind of irrelevant, because again, we want that as well. We want to be out drawing extra cards off of our Floodborn Clarabelle. But we're also playing 1 copy of Bend to My Will to make our opponent just discard all cards in their hand. turn, so we can give them plenty of cards courtesy of Donald and You're Welcome, etc., and then just take it all away, and suddenly they've got nothing, and we've literally got like 5, 6, 7 cards in our hand, and hopefully like a Clarabelle and a Donald, maybe something else on the board, and it just seems like you won on the spot. But we're also running 3 copies of Under the Sea, 8 cost, uninkable, sing together 8. Puts all opposing characters with 2 strength or less on the bottom of their player's deck in any order. 2 strength or less is already super relevant. Genies, tons of characters that already fit this description. We're also running 3 copies of Heads Held High, Touch the Sky, You Mean Everything to Me. 6 cost inkable, sing together 6. Remove up to 3 damage from any number of chosen characters, which is relevant if you're against illusions. You target 3 illusions and you pop them all. All opposing characters get -3 strength this turn. That doesn't happen just to characters that you removed 3 damage from, right? It's just blanket. All opposing characters lose 3 strength. So you've got to have at least 6 strength to be able to evade Heads Held High plus Under the Sea, which is not a lot of characters in our meta at the moment. So more often than not, this is just a board wipe. And again, if we're drawing tons of cards, courtesy of Donald, and then refueling with Clarabelle, like good odds that we're going to find these combo pieces. We're also running 3 vision and 4 develop your brain to help us filter through even more. In theory, we should be thinning our deck very quickly if we're getting a lot of early value off of Clarabelle, etc. So, yeah, it's really not unrealistic to be able to hit this combo and just completely clear up the board. 3 copy of Mother Knows Best. Pretty good in the mirror, especially for, like, bouncing your opponent. Like, you want to prevent your opponent's shift as long as possible, right? Not just from Clarabelle value, but allowing them to shift and then sing something of their own. Like, if they have just 1-drop Clarabelle and 2-drop Clarabelle, they have the option to shift the Clarabelle and immediately sing something like Under the Sea. And I had plenty of situations, to be honest, where I was able to sing Heads Held High with 1 or 2 characters and then just hard cast Under the Sea, and that was good enough. We're also seeing 2 copies of Stuffed Chaos in its tracks. 8 cost inkable, sing together 8. Return up to 2 chosen characters with 3 cost or less each to their player's hand. 3 strength or less, sorry. That's already very relevant. Lots of characters with 3 strength or less. Some of them you're actually going to be like, you don't want to be bouncing Hades if you can afford it and give them those come into play abilities again, but still plenty of characters where this is going to be relevant for. It's inkable. I think it's a perfectly fine inclusion. But yeah, Mother Knows Best, good in the mirror to be able to break your opponent's shift line. Bounce back the Genie they just played, and yeah, okay, play that Genie again and draw another card. That's really slow, and I want you to be drawing cards anyway. Yeah, I like Mother Knows Best here. And then we got 3 Scrooge, again, hard stats, and we can play this from turn 3. Donald Duck to help us ramp even more. 4 copies of Basil on play. You return a chosen character to their player's hand, and when he quests, your opponent discards a card at random. This is so good, mate. I'm so happy there's a really good Basil in the game. And I'm so happy there's a good John Silver Alien Pyro who gives Reckless to an opposing character on play and on quest. Again, this can be infuriating in the mirror. If you're just John Silvering each other's John Silvers and Basiling each other's Basils. And similar to the Blurple mirror match, it just tends to come down to who has the better top decks, who can make their character stick the longest, who can find the Hades. I will say, I think just the 1 Hades is like really low. Like I wanted to find room in my deck, and I went down to 3 Hades, and then I changed back because I was like, no, this feels like too important. I want this at max. So I will be honest, that is a bit of a surprise. Me doing that, I did cut the Bend to My Will, but in the mirror match especially, or against Blurple, then Bend to My Will can be really good. But yeah, deck's been doing really well. A lot of the best players in the game are talking about this deck. Again, shout out to the interview I did with Pandemonium Heart. If you haven't seen that interview, do go check it out. But yeah, I've put in quite a lot of testing with this deck, and it just does feel kind of bonkers. So no surprise to see it doing well. Congratulations to Candice. And our final deck list from the Diet Coke Invitational, we have Matt with some Emerald Steel. Let's go. I never thought I'd see the day where I would be cheering for Emerald Steel, but hey, look at us. I'm going to start off with the item. I mentioned this earlier. 2 copies of Emerald Chromacon, 3 cost uninkable. During opponent's turns, whenever one of your characters is banished, you may return another chosen character to their player's hand. This is super annoying. Again, like Clarabelles, you can really punish them for playing this. But that's basically the only item removal in the game. So yeah, I think this is really well positioned at the moment. I actually came up against it in the Content Creator Set Championship, and it did catch me off guard. Again, you'll see all those gameplay videos next week. But yeah, I like this. We've got the Clarabelle engine as our primary way of drawing cards. 4 strength and 2 cannons and 4 copies of Mother Knows Best for removal. But 4 strength and 4 Mother Knows Best is very relevant for some new cards from Fabled. We've got Max Goof. We'll start off with the 3 cost, who's a 2/2 quest for 1. The Rebellious Teen. When you play this character, you may pay 1 ink to return a song card with cost 3 or less from your discard to your hand. Just getting back strengths with this is just amazing. But yeah, if you're getting back Mother Knows Best, and that's also very, very cool. But we're also running the Chart Topper, 6 cost inkable, 4/5, quest for 2, shift 4. Whenever this character quests, you may play a song with cost 4 or less from your discard for free. Yo, this, I can't wait to see this do some work in Infinity. Then put it on the bottom of your deck, or put it on the bottom of your deck instead of into your discard. So yeah, just for questing, you get to trigger a Mother Knows Best or a Strength of Raging Fire for free, as long as it's in your discard. Again, the fact that it puts it on the bottom of the deck is a good thing. Otherwise, just like recurring the same copy over and over again seems pretty bad, but that's the explanation for the high count of Mother Knows Best, despite it being uninkable. It is one of the better songs left in the ink combination that fits the description of 4 cost or less, and again, you want to be seeing these songs a lot. I mentioned the big Clarabelle as our primary draw engine, 4 copies of the 1 cost and 4 copies of the 3 cost Clarabelle in here, just to like really back up how important it is to get this Clarabelle out, and your opponent should be doing everything they can to break this shift line. But we are also running 4 copies of Doc, so if we do run out of resources, we have another way to slightly refuel. 4 copies of Ursula, again, if you're sniping opponent, Strength for a Raging Fire, or Mother Knows Best if they're running it, but also with the increase of Emerald Sapphire decks, you get the Under the Sea, you get the Heads Held High. Some of them are running Mother Knows Best or Stop Chaos in its tracks. So yeah, it seems like Ursula value has increased slightly as of late. 4 copies of Captain Hook and 4 Calhoun for stats. 3 copies of Go-Go to catch some people off guard. 2 cost inkable, 2/2 quest for 1 evasive. And on play, you can pay 2 ink to gain lore equal to the damage on a chosen character. So some of those Blurple big characters like TikToks and Elsas and Hades, like you can really, really punish them. And 3 copies of Lewis. I've been calling him Louis, right? Because like that's how this spelling translates to me, but I have been told that in the film that he's from, which I think is Princess and the Frog, then they call him Lewis. So we will go by Disney lore. 3 cost inkable, 4/3 quest for 1. Enters play exerted, but on play you give Reckless to an opposing character. If they're running hooks or Rafikis, this feels so bad. If they're not, this is probably just a nice little tempo card that you can play. 3 Lawrence for stats and 4 copies of Pete to again shut off those Strength for Raging Fires, those Under the Sea, Into the Unknown, things like that. Super happy to see an ink combination that we haven't seen do a whole lot this set do something. Great to see Max Goof putting in some work. A huge congratulations to you, Matt. And going over to our other event, the Conflux Ink Clash over in Belgium, 101 players. It was a first and second finalist split. So we'll start off with Gianni here on Blurple, a deck list by and large very similar to the ones we looked at earlier. I will draw attention to the 4 copies of Robin Hood. Again, not the first time we've talked about him today, but I just like talking about Robin Hood. I think he's a very cool card to include in this deck. But another cool card is Ursula, Voice Stealer, 5 cost inkable, 3/4 quest for 1. On play, you may exert an opposing ready character and then play a song with cost equal or less to the exerted character's cost for free. I quite liked this, and I was playing this and kind of justifying it as 5th Elsa. Again, it seems really important to be able to get that ability to exert an opposing character as regularly as possible. I discussed it with Tiago, and he said that while he sees the point, he thinks there's probably just better cards that we could be playing as opposed to this. But I do like it myself. 1 copy of Scrooge, 2 copies of Monstro in here. Again, developed but no vision. That's me told. Congratulations to Gianni. And our other finalist was Denzel, also on Blurple. The Blurple mirror match. Here we do see 2 copies of Helping Hand. I mentioned this earlier. 1 cost uninkable. Chosen character gains support this turn and draw a card. So you can target an opposing Iago or any illusion to banish them, which is pretty cool. And even if you're not doing that, it's a 1 cost card that's drawing you a card. The uninkable count is pretty low anyway, and that's the other really good thing about Blurple at the moment, right? Is like they can get away with like between like 9 seems to be the average of uninkables, which is really, really good, especially considering you're running Tipo anyway. And then, yeah, giving support to a character. We've already talked about the use that you can get out of Basil and his support. Obviously, this is going to cost you 1 ink more, but if you've got that extra ink, then you are also drawing a card for your trouble, and maybe you're not giving up your Basil sooner than you need to. 4 copies of Finders Keepers in here. A 2-line special, super neat, looks good. Congratulations to them. In top 4, we've got Peter, also on Blurple. Those 3 copies of Helping Hand, 3 copies of Scrooge McDuck, 4 copies of Finders Keepers, 3 Donald Duck, and 2 copies of Dig a Little Deeper. Are you a second star to the right believer, or are you a digger? Are you a dig a little deeper, bruh? Words are hard. Nonetheless, looks good. Congratulations to Peter. In top 8, also on Blurple, we've got Jerome. 1 copy of that Ursula Voice Stealer, 2 TikToks, 4 Robin Hood, 2 Develop Your Brain, 4 copies of Hypnotic Strength. That's a lot. 1 copy of Scrooge McDuck. Again, slightly different counts, but same core skeleton. Looks good. Congratulations to Jerome. In top 8, also on Blurple, we've got Michelle. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing there. We have a second star to the right believer, 2 copies of Finders Keepers, 2 Monstro, 2 Elsa, 3 copies of TikTok, everything else seemingly following the script. So congratulations to them. And our final Blurple list to look at today, we've got Jeremy, another 2-line special. This looks identical to the the finalist deck list that we looked at. The 2-line special, we see the Helping Hand. Yeah, looks really solid. Congratulations to Jeremy. In top 8, we've got our lone Emerald Sapphire list from this event. Again, a lot of the same cards we've already talked about. No Stopped Chaos in its track for this deck list. 4 Hades, which I very much like to see. Finding room for 1 copy of Robin Hood. We found the room for Ben to My Will, and we're running 2 copies of Improvise. 1 cost inkable. Chosen character gets +1 strength this turn. Draw a card. The math can certainly matter. Drawing cards is good. Again, it's digging us towards our turn 2 ramp, right? If we don't hit ramp, maybe we hit develop. If we don't hit develop, maybe we hit Improvise. So it's another way of digging towards that, and it's a way of targeting the opposing illusions. And our final deck list of the day. In top 4, we have Thomas. 61 cards, our one and only Amber Steel deck list. I wonder how many Amber Steel lists were in these corresponding rooms. I'd like to think a fair amount. I would imagine the Emerald Sapphire decks might have had their way with them. But yeah, it performed really, really well last weekend. Sky winning PPG Denver, which was a CCQ, and it was actually a Amber Steel mirror match in that event. So yeah, a slight surprise to not see more of these this weekend, but also not really because, again, of the surge in Emerald Sapphire. But yeah, let's take a look at this aggro deck. A large focus being the Tiana, 3 cost uninkable, 1/4 quest for 2. Whenever a character of yours is challenged, while this character is exerted, the challenging character gets -3 strength this turn unless their player pays 3 ink. So, name of the game, set up as many high questers as you can, find the right turn to turn them all sideways. You hopefully are setting this Tiana up alongside a Pluto, who's a 5/5 bodyguard when he doesn't have any damage on him. Maybe they have an Into the Unknown, maybe they have a strength for a Raging Fire, so they pop the Tiana, but then maybe they can't get through the Pluto. If maybe they do get through it, but it's a 2-for-1, and now they've only got 1 character left to try and answer. Your Nala, your Daisy, your Lady, these just hugely aggressive characters. We are running the Rhino Shift package in here, another super annoying Furball. 4 copies of Mulan, just a way of filtering through the deck. 4 copies of Penny, can heal 2 damage and give resist 1. This allows for some really unfair plays with Rhino, who obviously has resist 2 when he has no damage. Maybe you take 3, you challenge into something with 3 strength, so you take just 1 damage, it gets through the resist 2 and you take a damage, but then you lose resist 2, and then this Penny comes down, heals the damage, and suddenly is completely ridiculous to try and get through once again. 3 copies of Nala, who quests for 3 and has resist 1 when she doesn't have any damage on her. 4 copies of Aurora, who when she quests you can pay a princess or a queen for 1 ink less, so setting up a turn 2 Tiana. We've got John Silver here to shut down challenges from opposing characters. 4 copies of Sven to keep one of our characters safe, but also in the mirror match you can re-ready your your opponent's Tiana, and then maybe make some nice challenges of your own. We're not running anything like Captain Hook, but like Silver, Lawrence, Pete, Rhino, these are all perfectly reasonable to be making challenges. 4 strength, of course, and 3 copies of Goofy Groundbreaking Chef. 4 cost Ingable, 3/4 quest for 2. At the end of your turn, you may remove up to 1 damage from each of your other characters. Ready each character you removed damage from this way. I already talked about some annoying plays you can make with Penny and Rhino. Goofy can also provide that. Lawrence loses his strength if he takes any damage, so maybe you heal him up with Penny or Goofy and then re-readying the characters to keep them safe. I really like the idea of Goofy. I really want him to work in this build. 61 cards, no one tell Lorcana, but nonetheless looks really solid. Again, a shame to not be talking about some more Amethyst Steel deck lists from these couple of events. Again, I'm sure there were others doing well in other events. Nonetheless, congratulations to Thomas. And that is it. So, very much a Blurple meta still. Amethyst Steel performing well. Emerald, Sapphire, 1 from each event you could definitely argue is an underperformance. I would definitely argue that only 1 Amber Steel deck list is an underperformance. Really nice to see some Green Steel and some Blue Steel though. And yeah, we are very close to Cardiff, CCQ and the Stockholm Open, and then Bologna and Milwaukee. So we are go, go, go. As I mentioned, we had the Content Creator Set Championships very recently. You'll start seeing content from that from next week, where I did indeed record all of my games. A huge shout out to Fidget. We'll shout him out again at the time. I'm still waiting for the Law League deck list from the weekend just gone to come up, but yeah, you'll have Cardiff and then Bologna, and yeah, content should very much pick up over the next month or so. But that's going to be it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to the channel, please subscribe for all things Lorcana. Hit that like button to show support, and we'll see you soon.